We welcome now Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Mr. ED, good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so you got the legislature in session across the street there. Any legislation in particular that you guys have been tracking that would affect your agency?
Yeah, well, our big piece, we were watching this alternative delivery methods that we're trying to get passed, where we can take advantage of all the federally sanctioned alternative methods by which we could deliver our product, that would allow us to kind of mitigate risk, cut costs, and hopefully cut time frame in which we would do a lot of our work. Fortunately, that passed overwhelmingly out of both houses, so I'm expecting that to go to the governor at some point, and we'll be able to move forward in the next year with a lot more tools in our toolbox. Beyond that, comes back down to money for us and trying to find ways to secure the reoccurring revenue necessary to run both our maintenance program as well as the capacity program, so that we can continue to improve our system in a way that can best accommodate the increased traffic, but at the same time trying to protect the investment the taxpayers already have. And unfortunately, that's not hit with we haven't got a lot of traction on that, so we're still working through that.
Tell us what the purpose is of the recurring. Explain that, why that's critical to.
Well, as you well know, we run a federal program. We're a state agency, but we implement a federal program. And so the way that works is, with all of the work that we do, we spend the state funds that are collected through the fuel tax and a few other smaller revenue streams. We spend that first. And as the Federal Highway Administration are able to see that we're doing things in accordance with their standards and that everything is appropriate, then they reimburse us to whatever percentage that particular project would need, whether it's 80% or on the interstates it's 90%. And so we have an account that's kind of like water in the river is the way I describe it. It's never the same money in it that was there yesterday or will be there tomorrow, because it's constantly a pass-through because we run this reimbursement program. Unfortunately, that federal money, and I think this has been lost on a lot of people in leadership, that federal money is a finite amount. It's not like the more state dollars we put up, we just can continue drawing down federal dollars. Every 5 years, Congress reauthorizes the Federal Highway Administration, and the dollar amount that each state will get every year over that 5-year period is set. And so fortunately, thanks to Congress' last reauthorization, Mississippi received an additional $1 billion, which results in about $200 million more a year, which allowed the commission at the time to restart this capacity program. And then the very next year is when inflation hit, the economy changed, cost of goods and materials and cost of labor went up. And so when you look at our maintenance program, you're seeing the same amount of dollars going into the program, but the tonnage of asphalt going down, which means less projects. So our number one need looking into the future is somehow reevaluating this funding model and coming up with a way that can generate the reoccurring revenue that's necessary to run these construction projects in a way that allows us to continue trying to stay ahead of the game and trying to be proactive rather than reactive with the needs we have around the state. You may remember this, and I point this out. This was the same position the commission was in about 12 years ago. And due to funding issues, the commission had to abandon the capacity program. So for over a decade, the program that was designed to enhance the system, turn 2 lanes into 4 lanes, build bypasses, things like that, to accommodate traffic and to meet what our traffic projections were, lay dormant. And without some type of federal grant or something that would allow them to do projects like 49 or the Greenville Bypass, for the most part, that program was non-existent. And that's why you have situations like I-20 in Jackson or I-10 on the coast or I-55 in DeSoto County or other areas around the state where the roadways just can no longer effectively handle the amount of traffic that we have. So it's crucial that that program stay alive, and I'm confident that if this funding issue isn't addressed in some way, and I don't expect us to solve it in one session, but if we don't take meaningful steps towards it, the next session, we're not going to be talking about the capacity program because that decision will be made for us. We're then going to be talking about, all right, now we've got to get the money in order to maintain what we've got.
Yeah.
Because we already fall behind that metric, unfortunately. But you know, that it all boils down to that old saying that money won't make you happy, but the lack of it will make you miserable, and that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. So, have you talked to the legislature about this? Are they on board?
We've talked with them. I think that we have a very pro-transportation legislature and governor.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of competing interests. I think that, you know, you've got situations like PERS and other needs that are in front of them that they have to deal with. I also think there's a lot of pet interest that kind of pull away from the focus on the core functions of government. Senator Hobson in the Senate, Senator Branning, they did introduce legislation that would have created some streams of revenue additionally that would go to capacity and to paving. Unfortunately, those bills were double referred and died on the calendar. The House has legislation that I haven't really had an opportunity to look at in depth, but that restructures a lot of our taxes, deals with income tax, sales tax, as well as an additional tax, it seems to me, that would be levied on the consumption of fuel. You know, I'm not sure what the likelihood of that bill passing is, or the interest behind it, or even what all's in the bill yet. It was just dropped yesterday. So the conversation is there. You know, I'm not sure where I would rank my hopes in that we make meaningful progress this session with it, but there's still time. I mean, we've still got 6 weeks out, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking at the legislation. It's pretty detailed. I mean, anytime you're dealing with taxes, of course, you certainly are, and it looks like it would allow municipalities to increase sales taxes, and I think there's within some range, and I think there's a sales tax increase component and then a phasing out of the income tax, best I can tell,
right.
just looking at the
and
high
as
level.
As far as our part, me just glancing at it, this would not be an increase in fuel tax, but an additional sales tax at 4% levied on the consumption of fuel.
Okay.
So at $3 a gallon, that would be 12 cents that would come in, and then I think the legislation allows for it to be split between the maintenance fund and the capacity fund.
Gotcha.
You know, and that's something we did to try to boost the legislature's confidence in giving us money, as we have accounts now that are set up at the Department of Finance and Administration that, as you know, is under the purview of the governor, and they can appropriate or divert funds into those accounts, and it doesn't matter who the director is or who the commissioners are. By force of law, every bit of the money that comes out of those accounts have to go to a maintenance project or a capacity project.
Right.
So before, I always thought that the legislature was a little dubious of giving MDOT money because they couldn't count on MDOT to do what they said they would do with it. So 2 years ago, we set these accounts up to try to take that issue off the table and say, look, now you don't have to worry about that. Now you can put the money there, and you can guarantee your constituents that every bit of the money that you put in those accounts by force of law now goes directly to one of those projects. So I feel like we as a department have done everything we can to try to set the table in a way that if we're able to come up with some solutions, or at least some steps towards solutions, that there's a mechanism in place that they can do that with full confidence that the money gets where they need it to go.
I got you. So is there some additional need, Brad, for this recurring revenue? You may have explained that, but is there some need to sort of demonstrate that to the federal government in order to access some of the funding there?
Well, no. I mean, right now, we, as I said, every 5 years when the Federal Highway Administration is reauthorized, there's a finite amount of federal money that we know we have the opportunity to try to utilize.
Okay.
And so by having our state funds, the state fuel tax and all that we collect, by having that uninhibited by earmarks and other things that they've done in the past, that allows us to play this shell game to make certain that we spend the state money we've got in a way that we're able to draw down and utilize 100% of the federal money involved.
Okay.
The issue we're running into is we've got 32,000 lane miles around the state that we're supposed to maintain, and $9 billion worth of construction projects that we need to build, and that's just simply not enough money to do it. I mean, you're looking at, in the last couple of years, prices of asphalt and materials and labor have gone up to such a point that we're just not able to have the resources necessary to address these needs in the way that the taxpayers would expect.
And what I think you and Commissioner Simmons have called for, I've certainly heard him talk about it before, is perhaps a diversion of use tax revenue.
Use
is that
tax,
right?
Gaming revenue. Those are two streams of revenue traditionally that have been used in infrastructure now And so it just made sense to me that those would be places that they could go to create this reoccurring revenue, additional funds.
I got you. Well, what have they said before we go here?
Those are the two bills that died in the Senate.
Okay.
So
Got it.
So we'll
Always
just keep
good to see
plugging
you.
away.
I understand.
Thank you for
good
the
to see you,
time. I
Brad.
appreciate you.
Yeah, man. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.